Miami just added a stud at running back, and they don't even really need him.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest and craziest, wackiest sport on planet Earth, college football. The top players in the portal. Stanford brought in a transfer at quarterback. Stanford added a transfer. I mean, I didn't even know it was allowed. Alex Dono, Locked On Canes. I know transfers are allowed at Miami, and CharMar Brown, among the top running backs to move, maybe outside of Cal's Jaden Ott, this transfer portal cycle in the spring. Dono ends up choosing Miami, and ironically, Cal was after him. Why? Cal had a much bigger need, and CharMar Brown was the FCS Freshman of the Year at North Dakota State, which, for those of you who don't know, is a big boy program. National championship caliber. They are Alabama of the FCS. That's what they are and have been for a long time. They could go to the FBS right now in any Power 4 conference and be a respectable team. Why do you think he chose Miami if he's not guaranteed to be their starting running back?
Well, and that question is the exact reason why I was surprised, pleasantly surprised, but surprised that CharMar Brown chose Miami, because he had been earlier this week, and this is the magic of the transfer portal. It's unpredictable. There are twists and turns. It looked like he was about to be a Cal Golden Bear. Like, that seemed like virtually a done deal. The crystal ball predictions were coming in and all that. And then it was Wednesday morning when, it became clear it wasn't going to be Cal for him. I'm not exactly sure why. And then it was looking for a few hours like a Miami versus Nebraska battle. Miami and Nebraska had both hosted Brown for recent visits, and both sides thought they did really well with the visits. And several days elapsed between Brown's Miami visit and him ultimately deciding to choose the University of Miami. So, saying all the right things, of course, about him being impressed with the offensive approach, the idea of being able to run behind a really good offensive line, which is what Miami has. But like you said in the opening, Miami didn't have a massive need. Obviously, there is some need because you're not going to recruit a CharMar Brown if you don't have needs at running back. But really, Miami's need at running back wasn't the same as Cal's need. Like, Cal needs to find anybody because they lost 5 running backs into the transfer portal.
They did find one guy. They added a guy from UTSA, so they have one scholarship running back. It seems
Who's
on the roster
get
right
40
now.
Carries a game next year.
He might. He might.
Yeah, so in the case of Miami, the Hurricanes really wanted and I think needed to solidify their running back room to have at least 3 backs with experience and production that they can trust, because Miami has a really good 1-2 punch. And this is not me saying CharMar Brown's going to be the third stringer. I don't know. He could be anywhere from the first to the third stringer, because this is a running back that I think is a really good addition for Miami. But Miami really wanted to have, 3 guys with experience that they can trust, because behind Mark Fletcher, Jordan Lyle, and now CharMar Brown, they've got a redshirt freshman, Chris Wheatley-Humphrey, who didn't play a whole lot last year. And they have a true freshman, Gerard Pringle, who obviously has not played at the collegiate level. So I think, and Miami only had 4 scholarship running backs before they added Brown. So they needed to solidify that room. And I also think that part of Brown's decision to come to Miami, he's the type of physical, powerful running back that, a Mario Cristobal offense usually covets. I mean, he does have some speed, so I'm not going to say he's just strictly a power back or anything like that. But with what I've seen from CharMar Brown, part of like his superpower skill set is being able to grind out an extra couple of yards, like being able to turn a 2-yard gain into a 4-yard gain and always moving forward. And that, to me, I think is something that is going to be perfect at Miami, because their other power back is Mark Fletcher. Jordan Lyle, not as powerful. I mentioned Wheatley-Humphrey. He's like a more sleight of frame speed guy. So they really needed another body type like this. And in some ways, it feels like a luxury pickup for Miami. But again, they only had 4 scholarship running backs before making this move. So this is like a really solid way to fill that need in the running back rotation.
I think the power comparison is an appropriate one. What does North Dakota State do? They run the football with the power eye. I mean, Miami is more spread out of an offense than North Dakota State, who will still go under center and just line up Jim Harbaugh style. They're Michigan down at the FCS ranks. They've won at the level of Alabama, but stylistically, they are Michigan. And he is that kind of power guy, was over 1,000 yards this past year. And as I mentioned, the FCS Freshman of the Year. That is no small feat down there. And I wonder how much, if at all, NIL came into play here. I would think, without knowing detailed information, Dono, that Miami's got more well-stocked cupboards in that regard than Cal. On the flip side of the coin, Cal just beat out Florida State for a recruit 30 minutes from campus and Cam Brooks. And I was kind of going, well, that's a surprising one. So I certainly think it's a loss for the Bears. That did pop into my head. I wonder if the offer was just bigger. It wouldn't be the first time that Miami pulled a running back with a bigger NIL deal from a West Coast school.
Yeah, and I know that some of the buzz from the Nebraska side, because they're also disappointed that they missed out on Brown, because as mentioned, when Cal, lost their momentum, it was Miami versus Nebraska, and this is a player that Matt Rule really wanted. And you do hear some of the accusations coming out on that side. Miami bid a higher price than Nebraska was willing to pay and match. I do, and obviously Miami is in a very good NIL situation, and they do have that reputation for bidding high for certain players, and I get it. I think Miami is being in this particular transfer portal cycle, they're being pretty selective of the way that they're budgeting. So, like, I don't think they're throwing like the type of Carson Beck money at CharMar Brown, but I'm sure the NIL package was considerable.
I would hope they're not throwing that much money at him.
Yeah, well,
I mean, he's a good player, but Carson Beck is starting quarterback. That's like a $3-4 million a year guy.
Yeah, so I don't think it was any sort of like a crazy offer, because again, like there have been certain situations this spring where, I do get the buzz that Miami is getting outbid for some players, but maybe they felt the need for running back was bigger. And yeah, you're hearing some of that from the Nebraska side, but ultimately, and another thing that comes into play, to be fair, in the state of Florida, no state income tax. So when players consider that, if you're choosing a spot like Florida over a school in California, I don't know what the Nebraska state income tax situation is. I assume they have it there because there's only a few states that don't, like Florida, Texas, Nevada, Delaware, maybe a couple of others. But yeah, I mean, that's also something that comes into play when you're talking about NIL offers and stuff, that players kind of figure, hey, maybe I can actually save a few bucks being here.
The states, according to a quick Google search with no income tax: Alaska, Florida, Nevada, New Hampshire, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Washington, Wyoming. Those are the 9 strong that have no income tax whatsoever. That was a conversation that I had here on the show with regards to Nico. Is he didn't just get a smaller NIL deal going to UCLA. He also has to go to California, where the taxes are significantly higher. And all of a sudden, you originally set out to get yourself more money and just completely misplayed the market, because you wound up there for less of a deal in a state where it is taxed significantly higher. That's a double whammy, but the grass isn't always greener. But for CharMar Brown, he certainly thinks it will be. Alex Dono, Locked On Canes, always green pastures when he's here on this show. The portal will keep buzzing. Impact players are still out there. The top players in the transfer portal coming next. First, this episode brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. Supply House, whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands, you'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, Their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now, it's your turn. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM. Start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. So, interestingly enough, since Dono and I recorded that segment about Miami's newest transfer, they went in the portal and they got another one. They go get Jacoby Thomas at safety from Tennessee. Now, you look at his career stats on Twitter, if you see the graphic that guys like Hayes Fawcett put out, and you see, he's compiled a bunch of stats and PBUs. I don't know that this is a starting caliber player necessarily. I certainly like having him as a depth piece. He was the third most snap safety for Tennessee a year ago. 263 total snaps on the back end of that vaunted Vols defense from a year ago. His Pro Football Focus grade was 68.5. That's slightly below what you'd consider good or average. 70 is good, 80 is great, 90 is special. Anything below 70, it's okay. It's all right. I do appreciate, though, and this is a consistent theme of mine in every offseason that I've ever covered in college football, because frankly, it's not always as common in college or professional sports as you might think. When you have a weakness, go out and attack it aggressively to get better. That's what the offseason is for. You compare this to a good college example is 2022 USC. 11-1, Pac-12 championship game, RIP, lose to Utah, lose the Cotton Bowl to Tulane, embarrassing defensive performances all around. And what did they do? They stuck with their defensive coordinator and they didn't make wholesale changes. Well, that wasted a season of Caleb Williams. They went 7-5 with the reigning Heisman Trophy winner and future number 1 overall pick at quarterback. Not good. Not good. And there are lots of examples that you can find. You can find this in professional sports, college sports, where you want to look. So I appreciate that Miami had a good season last year. They could have run it back and said, hey, we'll have Carson Beck. He's not Cam Ward with his legs and special throwing ability, but he's really good. He'll be productive. Offensive line will be good. Ground game should be there. Look, CharMar Brown might be our third running back. And all of a sudden, you think, we could just be an 8-9 win team. Nothing wrong with that. Nope, not satisfied. Best season to date under Mario Cristobal's tutelage at Miami in year 3. They go 10-3, and what do you know? They're going out and they are attacking their weakness, the defensive side of the ball. New defensive staff, plenty of transfers, retain some key guys. I like what I'm seeing there. So Jacoby Thomas was, according to 24/7, one of the 10 best players available in the transfer portal. He came off the board quite literally about a half hour following Alex and I's recording of the segment talking about CharMar Brown. So that's one name I was going to highlight, and then what do you know? He's got a new home. I think the best player available in the transfer portal, though, is Amare Campbell from North Carolina. I'm fascinated to see where he winds up. We've already seen one impact player in Bo Atkinson go to Ohio State. I think it's a really nice pickup for the Buckeyes. If not to be a depth piece, I think he can be a solid starter, even for Ohio State's defense. He won't be Jack Sawyer or JT Tuimoloau out, but Bo Atkinson is a dude. Amare Campbell is also a dude. And he's not ranked on 24/7 as the best player available. I don't know, man. He's got to be. Now, to be fair, he's inside the top 10. I just don't know how many guys in the transfer portal have 6.5 sacks from this past season. He had a PFF grade of 72.5, 76 total tackles, 6.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 2 pass breakups. Kind of hard to argue with that. Really hard, as a matter of fact, to argue with that. And so I like Campbell. He is a sophomore, or was a sophomore this past year, going into his 3rd season of eligibility. I think Campbell is going to be a really good pickup for someone looking for a linebacker, a position, by the way, that really doesn't have a lot of high-end guys move around. There are a couple of spots like that. Linebacker is like that. Tight end is like that as well. You don't see big-time players move around that often. Benjamin Jurasik went from Stanford to Georgia last year. He wasn't their top guy. Oscar Delp was their top tight end, but you just don't see highly rated recruits or even highly rated portal recruits or big impact guys at tight end move around all that often. Linebacker's another one. And speaking of linebackers, Harrison Taggart, looking at Colorado, looking at NC State as well, transfer from BYU. He was their third most snap linebacker last year, former 4-star recruit, one-time Oregon Duck, veteran in college football at this point. He's got a solid amount of playing experience. The production was there. I was surprised when he left BYU. That's a name to know. I tell you one I'm surprised is still in the portal is Marcavius Brown, the transfer corner from Purdue. Really thought he would have found a home by now. Now, maybe that's a product of him having a lot of different offers, because I think he is a starting caliber corner. And again, that's a premium position that schools are typically in the NIL market and transfer portal going to pay top dollar for, because it's just like the NFL now. Quarterback, edge rusher, offensive tackle, corner. Got to have great ones. I don't know that Marcavius Brown is a great one. I think he's a good one, though. So interested to see how his timeline goes. I can't imagine he stays in the transfer portal for that much longer, but hey, what the heck do I know? So another one, Tobias Merriweather. I talked about him on a segment earlier this week. Wide receiver from Cal, former Notre Dame commit, class of 2022, was underutilized, really overshadowed by other receiving talent during his time with the Golden Bears in Berkeley. Merriweather is 6'5", 205 pounds, kind of in that sort of long, wiry frame, like the type of receiver that Colorado has been adding. He's also one of the top players in the transfer portal. Again, it's easy to think of the portal as, well, it's closed. Well, guys can come out of the portal at any point in time. It's not as slim pickings as you would think. It's certainly not the beginning or the middle of the spring transfer portal window. We're towards the end of it. That doesn't mean guys aren't out there who are going to be able to come in and make a difference, because I really think that they are. And I like Merriweather a lot. I don't know that there's a receiver in the portal who I would rather have than Merriweather. Certainly there are some other options that are available, but I think those are kind of the best guys that are out there. I mean, you have a couple of safeties that are still. AJ Halsey grades as a 4-star transfer according to 24/7, transferring from Houston. And again, in 24/7's defense, Amare Campbell is the 4th highest rated player, but one of the guys they have in front is Jonte Cook, who has been crystal balled to Syracuse. He visited Arizona State. I don't know. I'm not crazy about that particular situation, but I think that Campbell's got to be the top guy. The second highest rated player is Kean Burnett, a tight end. Again, I think Campbell makes a much bigger impact than either of those guys. But safety is a strangely plentiful position. You have not just AJ Halsey coming from Houston, but Gregory Smith from Florida as well. I think either one of those guys can go somewhere and wind up being a starter. Smith was a 4-star prospect coming out of high school, and Halsey grades as a 4-star transfer right here and now. So you've got some maybe lower end, but still blue chip talent that is out there. I just keep coming back to Amare Campbell. I think he and Marcavius Brown both are probably looking to see what their offers are. I think Campbell's are probably a bit more lucrative, but that's someone who goes and figures out how he's going to, how big of an impact he's going to have. I think he's underrated, frankly, as a 3-star linebacker transfer. I think he is someone that can absolutely go and be a starting linebacker for a Power 4 school, and you'll like the production that you get. Speaking of transfers, Stanford. This is the most I've ever talked about Stanford in an entire offseason. I love it. Stanford brought in a transfer quarterback. What are they doing? I know. Okay, so my longtime Pac-12 listeners out there are going to enjoy this segment thoroughly. Not just because it involves Stanford, but the Cardinal have brought in Ben Gulbranson via the transfer portal. Now, this is notable for 2 reasons. Reason number 1, Gulbranson could wind up being Stanford's starter this year because they don't have anyone else. Ashton Daniels and Justin Lamson were the guys last year. They have both gone elsewhere. Daniels is the backup quarterback to Jackson Arnold down at Auburn for Hugh Freeze. Lamson, I don't remember where he went, but I don't think he's going to be showing up on your television a whole heck of a lot this fall. But Ben Gulbranson coming in to start is a real possibility in my view. Ever since Andrew Luck took over as GM, he has made it very clear and very publicly that he is going to be a driving force of anything that Stanford does. This is the most hands-on GM we've ever seen. Which other GM is taking snaps at practice? I mean, he is, I think, frankly, what the program needed. I don't know if they need Frank Reich as potentially being their head coach long-term. He's going to be the interim this fall. I have my questions about all of that. However, if Andrew Luck is just having his friend do him a solid while he buys time to go do a coaching search and try to make this job look more appealing, this is kind of the way to do it. So the two ways this is impactful, Gulbranson going to Stanford, are that the Cardinal now have someone who could try to pull an upset. Gulbranson's done it before in his career. This is a veteran who has not thrown for a lot of yards. He's not slinging it around the yard. I don't know what Stanford's offense is going to be with Andrew Luck as GM and Frank Reich as head coach. I know what it was under Troy Taylor. I don't know what it is in the immediate aftermath. But Stanford bringing in transfers, frankly, is the bigger takeaway. The fact that they can go out and add some guys. They've added a handful of players. More than a handful, quite frankly. 18 players. Did you know that? Stanford's brought in 18 players via the transfer portal in the 2025 cycle. That is groundbreaking stuff. I am fairly certain that's more transfers than they've brought in ever to their football program. They've done it in one cycle. It's not a coincidence that Andrew Luck's arrival has coincided with that. I think he's gone to the administration and not strong-armed, but strongly encouraged them to reconsider their policy on, you don't transfer to Stanford, you only transfer out. Well, that's not great. They lost Emmett Mosley, they lost David Bailey. This is not a great roster in any sense of the term. But let me give you a handful of schools who Stanford's transfer class currently ranks higher than. Arizona, Arizona State, Kansas State. All right, let's just stop at those three before I get to Iowa State, Notre Dame, Oregon State, Pitt, and NC State, and Penn State. Let's just go to those three Big 12 schools who fine institutions academically. Their barriers to entry, not exactly the same as what the Cardinal have. So I think this is clearly a focus for Andrew Luck to try to bring Stanford into the modern era of college football, to get them playing in the transfer portal and going out and getting players. And hopefully the next step is, we got to have some NIL dollars to throw around. Stanford's endowment is rather large. They could throw what is the equivalent of you or I dropping a couple pennies out of our wallet, and they could have at least a respectable NIL fund. Because remember, the top rosters in college football non-revenue sharing last year were in the $20 million range. Let me assure you, if Stanford decides that they want to care, they can arise towards the top of the ACC because, $20 million just isn't that much to Stanford University. It's a lot to you and me. It's a lot to most people. It's just not. That money would not be missed from anywhere they would want to pull it from if they wanted to put that into NIL. But you have brought in guys to Stanford in this transfer portal cycle that have come from all over the place. You've got Yale, Fresno State, Colorado, Wisconsin, Georgia Tech, Memphis, Wake Forest, Texas Tech. The list goes on and on. But Gulbranson is someone who I think they're bringing in as a depth piece. I hope they are, because I'm nothing if not consistent with all my opinions, takes, mantras, whatever. Stanford should, if he's healthy, start Elijah Brown. That is 100% what they should do. He's 6'2", 205 pounds, was one of the top 15 to 20 quarterbacks coming out of the 2024 cycle. Had some serious big-time offers. He got hurt last year, or maybe he would have played. I don't know. They probably still would have run with Ashton Daniels because Troy Taylor was needing to win. That didn't happen. Guess what? You don't need to win now. If you're Andrew Luck, think about the long-term trajectory. Don't you want to have a winning program within the next 2 years? You don't want this to take 5. It's going to take some time. But you want to grow with a young quarterback. The opportunity is right there in front of you. You have a no expectation season with an interim head coach. You have a guy who has at least seen how college football works for a year. You're now around the program and have the ability to teach this kid who's got the tools to be a good starting quarterback and help you rebuild. So let him go out there, make some mistakes, grow, and just say the season's a wash. The season's it's just a growing opportunity. Figure out how we can use the transfer portal. Figure out how we up our NIL commitment. Figure out how to get Elijah Brown to be the starting quarterback, because there is not a better option. Ben Gulbranson is, put him in if you need to have someone that understands how an offense works and what it takes to call the plays, make a couple of throws. Gulbranson's not overly mobile. He does not have a big arm. He does not have great career passing statistics. He's not an air raid sort of guy. He can hand the ball off, run some play action, and do simple stuff like that. Nothing wrong with that. He's a quality backup quarterback for an offense like Stanford's. But I hope they go out and invest in Elijah Brown. And I think this about Bryce Underwood over at Michigan. I thought this with Dylan Raiola last year at Nebraska. I think this with Juju Lewis at Colorado. Unless you have a massive veteran upgrade who's going to win you a bunch of games, like we were talking about, or we will talk about on Monday, rather, the Alabama quarterback situation. They've got Ty Simpson, who's a veteran of sorts, not a ton of experience, but a ton of time spent in Tuscaloosa. That's an area where I can get behind. All right, let Keelan Russell sit, 5-star top quarterback, one of the top quarterbacks in the 2025 class. He can sit. He can learn. He can wait his turn, because this is a guy you can go with and win some games with. But if you don't have that, and Ben Gulbranson, I'm sorry, he's not that sort of guy. He won games with Oregon State with a roster that was really good. Stanford's roster, even with the transfers, is going to be at a disadvantage. I do respect, and ACC fans out there listening or watching should also respect the fact that Stanford's starting to utilize the portal. That's a significant development. Andrew Luck is not taking his time to just, I just want to be here. I just want to be fun. No. I don't think that's how he's built at all. So I hope they go with him. I get the Gulbranson move. I'm keeping my eye on Stanford. That is something that, if they are right, when they were right, back in the early 2010s, perennial top 10 team. Can they be there again? Maybe not. Perennial top 20, that's in the cards. Pun intended. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.